Give me a little intro there, Gomer.
Let's put on the show.
You're listening to the Station 71 podcast. My name is Brian, and this week I'm joined by my co-hosts,
Beth
and Kirsten.
So, as you've obviously figured out, Mario is not here with us this week. He is taking a much-deserved vacation, so you got the three of us this week. Got a little bit of history to dive into, but before we do that, we're going to go over some news topics. So first off, we have or I shouldn't say a little bit, but some very sad news to report. Walt Disney World pianist Mark Anderson passed away at 66 this week. Many people will know him as the Casey's Corner pianist. Was out there very frequently. So this is definitely very sad news. You know, we talk so much about how live entertainment is just, it really gives Disney that extra, specialness in the experience when you go to the park, and especially when we see someone like this who was there and part of the parks for so long. It's definitely very sad to lose someone like this.
Yeah, definitely. Always sad to lose a cast member, but especially one that has such an impact like this.
But Mark was a pianist for Disney for over 30 years.
Wow.
I know, like, it's rare to see most people stay in a career that long, let alone, like, this type of performance, position. So it's definitely sad news. But best of wishes to his family and everyone else. So if you are in the parks or stopping by Casey's soon, just make sure to keep him in your thoughts and remember all the good times and good tunes that he brought to the area.
I do like that it says, if you're feeling inclined, please leave a note, flower, or bag of Cheetos at the piano at Casey's Corner. Apparently, it's a family favorite with the Cheetos.
Aww.
Well, in some slightly uplifting news, we have some more character meet and greets that are returning to Epcot this weekend. So notably, we have Donald Duck coming back to the Mexico Pavilion, who I think is a very integral part of the experience there.
For sure, with his little poncho and sombrero.
Yeah. It's always good to see the classic characters, I feel like, but when they do something special for them for certain locations, it's just that little bit of extra icing on the cake.
Yeah.
And then over at the Imagination Pavilion, we have Vanellope and Joy returning to the ImageWorks meet and greet area. So, yeah. Though we should note that even though they are coming back, meet and greets themselves are not back to how they normally were. There's still no direct contact between characters and guests, so still got to keep your distance. But hey, at least they're back.
Yeah, it's nice to see the characters coming back, at least to interact with guests, even if it's at a little bit of a distance.
I also saw that they're going to start putting meet and greets on Genie Plus or Genie to make reservations, I guess.
Oh.
I just saw this, if not, 30 minutes ago, so.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. They used to have Fast Pass Plus for some of them, so this is just the new era.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it will be a good thing overall.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, some of the lines for the characters are absolutely outrageous. So on the one hand, I do think that, people that are more into meet and greets probably than I am are going to really enjoy that. On the other hand, especially with Donald Duck in Mexico, it was just very cool to just happen to be walking by and he's out and then you just pop over there and do it. So I'm hoping that it doesn't take away that kind of like spontaneous meet and greet that you used to get.
Yeah, if anything, I would guess that the meet and greets coming to Genie Plus are going to be the really high demand ones, like Anna and Elsa in Norway, and like the princesses that have, all the princesses at Fairy Tale Hall and Magic Kingdom, and those types of like really high demand ones. So I'm assuming / hoping that there will still be the occasional spontaneous walk by.
Yeah. And in our final bit of news, we have something that, well, we had bad news, we had good news, and this is probably going to be kind of divisive. The Disney Park Pass system is extended into early 2024. So
I'm calling it bad news.
Me too.
Yeah,
me
I'm
too.
with you there.
I'm so tired of it. It's like, going back to what we were just saying about the nice spontaneous experiences. It's like you can't just decide you're going to go to a park, like which park on which day. You have to like plan it out. And I feel like one of my favorite things to do is just to kind of wing it from time to time. Just, obviously I have the basics in mind of like, here's what I want to do. But when I wake up, I'm like, I'm going to go to this park today. But can't really do that anymore. And not until at least after 2024, early
Yeah.
2024.
I bet never again.
Yeah, I think they like knowing how many people at least they're going to start the day with in each park.
They love it.
So I
Well,
also
I'm sure
don't
it
really
helps on
see
the
it
back
leaving.
end. Like with the staffing,
Mhm.
I'm sure they can be like, oh, we don't need this many people on Tuesdays. Like I'm sure they have that pretty well done already, but this is just more data for their little world domination plan.
Right.
It's just so funny to think that like Disney World would be, I mean, I guess all companies kind of have to be, but are you really going to be trying to minimize, employees to that extent?
Yes.
I mean, okay, yeah, obviously that was stupid to say. As soon as I said it out loud, I realized how dumb that was. But
you're such an optimist.
no, I mean, but I just think like Disney has to have so many people running it. It's not like it's a small store and you can say, well, we only need 2 people here. It's like how many thousands of people do we need in Magic Kingdom today? So it just seems like you're kind of splitting hairs to really try to minimize it that much. But
let me tell you what Bob Chapek told me one time.
Oh, you
$20
spoke to him
$20,
personally.
Okay, $20 is $20. So
Yep.
That seems to be the new Disney Parks philosophy.
Unfortunately.
Well, unless anybody has other stuff to say about news, I guess we can roll into this week's history lesson.
Yeah, let's hear some fun stuff.
Okay, so this week I decided, well, I didn't really decide. I decided to do this topic, but this topic was actually suggested by a listener, Jennifer. I have no idea. I feel like this has been sitting on the table for like a long time.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, so much that I thought we had already done this, and I had to go back and look through all of our episodes to make sure that we hadn't, because I mean, we've obviously talked about Expedition Everest time and time again, but I could have sworn that we did a history episode on it. We have not. So I was having very bad deja vu as I was planning this episode, but yeah. Anyways, got it together. So thanks, Jennifer, for suggesting this, and sorry this took so long to finally get out, but hey, we're doing it at long last.
Jennifer ain't even a listener anymore.
Yeah, Jennifer has moved on to
another
point in her life.
I'm just kidding. Jennifer, I hope that you are still out there and you're listening to this episode and you're like, it's been 84 years. But we finally made it.
She's listening to us out of spite every week. She doesn't enjoy it, but she wants to hold it against us every week we go without doing this. I
suggested that topic like 3 years ago. I'm going to listen to every episode until they finally do it.
Yep.
Is this deja vu why you titled this recording History of Expedition Everest Take 2?
No, because we were supposed to record this 2 days ago and we didn't.
Oh, okay.
So
And I ruined it.
no, I went to make the Zencaster recording and I realized that it saved the other one that I had made. So I was worried, if I named them the same thing, that somehow, some way we would like lose the recording. So
You are a boomer.
hey, look, yeah, it's like parentheses 1 rev B everything. But anyways, we've got the recording and it should work. If you're listening to this, spoiler alert, it worked. So
Woo!
all right, so we'll kick off our history, and I'll do this like I normally do by not talking about the actual attraction that I'm supposed to be doing the history report on first. And talk a little bit about Animal Kingdom in its early years. So when Animal Kingdom opened in 1998, Disney was very adamant that the park was much more than a typical zoo. And they even based an ad campaign around this made-up word, not a zoo, to really drive the point home. And people that haven't seen this, you can go back and look up the commercials that Disney put out online. I think they're on YouTube, but yeah, it's not a zoo. I think it was supposed to sound kind of like
Swahili or something.
But it's not a zoo. And while the park was certainly much larger and better themed than what most guests would have seen from their local zoo, Animal Kingdom, at this time at least, didn't really offer that much outside of a typical zoo experience. And I know some people might say, hang on, Brian, that's not fair. But if you look in 1998, when Animal Kingdom opened, there were a number of shows that they had in addition to the animal enclosure, like Stuff to Be a Bug and Celebration the Festival of the Lion King, but they really lacked a lot of ride-based attractions. And at this time, the only thing that they had that you would really consider a ride were Kilimanjaro Safaris, which was impressive, but it was essentially just a different viewing of the animal enclosures, and Countdown to Extinction, which, in my opinion, is really the only ride, theme park style ride. Mm-hmm. So yes,
which for those of you out there who are younger than us, that is what became Dinosaur now.
Yes, thank you. But yeah, so as much as Disney was really trying to drive home this not a zoo philosophy, at this time, Animal Kingdom was essentially a big zoo. And this led to Animal Kingdom becoming a half-day park in many guests' minds, and more importantly, their itineraries. And though Disney may have disagreed with that distinction, the fact of the matter was that only half of the park was really open at this time. Park's two main lands outside of Discovery Island were Africa and Asia, but if you went to Asia, the only thing that you could do there was the Flights of Wonder bird show. So to say that it was unfinished was a bit of an understatement. And it's weird to think back on this because I went, I believe it was either 98 or 99. I think it was in 98 right after the park opened. And I don't remember it being so barren.
Yeah. I went also either in 98 or 99, and I don't remember a whole lot because that was such a long time ago, but I always really enjoyed it. But then again, I'm a huge nature nerd, as we all know. So maybe I just was so into that I didn't realize it was lacking.
Maybe. And, at the end of the day, obviously, you're a person that loves zoos. I'm a person that loves zoos. So it's like you're still getting a very good zoo experience, even if you're really just getting a zoo experience. So
mm-hmm.
I think the first time I went, Everest had just opened, and that was like, the big thing at the time. But that's really all I remember. I remember the Festival of the Lion King and the bird show.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it.
Yeah, we don't need to knock down Flights of Wonder because it was an incredible show.
Oh, I loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't necessarily make an entire land in a theme park.
True.
So more was planned, obviously, and in early 1999 saw the opening of Cali River Rapids as well as the Maharaja Jungle Trek, which greatly helped to solidify Asia as its own land. Further expansions came to the park in 2002 with our favorite addition of Chester and Hester's Dinorama, which brought 2, albeit very small, rides to the park. It seemed that Animal Kingdom was growing into its own unique experience for guests, but the numbers were telling a different story. There's a small uptick in attendance from 1998 to 1999, which was mainly due to the fact that 1999 was the first full year that the park was open. But after that, for the next almost 5 years, the park either saw stagnation or a decline in visitors year after year. So Disney's newest and largest theme park was bringing in the lowest number of guests. So even in 2002, with the new rides and expansions that had come to the park, and Animal Kingdom essentially being completed at this point, at least having multiple complete lands, attendance from 2001 to 2002 dropped 6%. There were only 7.3 million visitors, again, to what should probably have been Disney's most exciting park, it being the biggest and newest and offering such a unique experience. 7.3 million visitors was more than 1 million less than Epcot saw that same year, and about half of the 14 million guests that went to Magic Kingdom that same year.
Wow.
So to say that Animal Kingdom was not performing as well as I'm sure investors would have hoped, it was not looking good for them.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as Disney wanted to lean into this not a zoo philosophy that they had been pushing, many guests viewed Animal Kingdom as an upscale zoo that they might visit while on a trip to the other parks. And at the end of the day, without an e-ticket thrill ride, it'd be really hard for Disney to shake that reputation for the park. To the casual observer, it may have seemed that Disney board was okay with this, since no new attractions opened in the park from 2002 to 2006. However, there was literally something big on the horizon. So obviously we know what's coming, but that was a pretty shocking thing that I didn't realize when I was researching this, that, you know, in the middle of Animal Kingdom having this really just not great attendance record, that for 4 whole years, no new attractions opened up in the park.
Mm.
So moving on to something big. Disney Imagineer, world traveler, and earring connoisseur Joe Rohde had been the lead in development for the majority of Animal Kingdom, and now he was leading the charge to bring a new attraction to the park that would hopefully revitalize attendance numbers. And like most great ideas in Imagineering, the direction of the project was inspired by works of the previous generation. Looking to the popular Matterhorn bobsled coaster in Disneyland, Rohde and his team decided to take the basic idea of a coaster flying through a snowy mountain and scale it up a lot.
Significantly.
Yes. Rohde and the other Imagineers would not be satisfied with simply putting a version of the existing attraction into Animal Kingdom. Instead, they began developing an attraction with a much deeper storyline and lore that would be based upon Mount Everest and the legend of the Yeti in the Himalayas. With the overall idea in hand, the team traveled to the Himalayas multiple times to research the landscape, flora, customs, and lore of the region. And, you know, I think this is just part of Disney Imagineering that is so cool and just makes me want to be a part of it so bad, is that, you know, they don't do online research and call it good, like, and especially, you know, an Imagineer like Joe Rohde is gonna go and see it in person and get the feel, you know, the sights, the smells of the actual locations, and bring back as much of that as he could into the attraction.
Yeah.
Maybe we have Expedition Everest because he just really wanted to go to the Himalayas.
And you know what?
Who can
I'm
blame
totally
him?
cool with that. Yeah. Like, if I had that opportunity, oh my gosh, I would be planning attractions based on all kinds of locations around the
Right?
world.
Amen.
I gotta say though, you can really tell, I think, especially with this attraction, how much research was put into it. Especially, even just the queue is one of my favorite
Absolutely.
queues, just because of all of the information that I'm always kind of sad that when the queue goes by so fast that I don't have time to absorb all of it because there's
Hmm.
so much to look at.
And I remember even being a kid, and most of the time, you're just trying to get through the queue to get on the ride. And I remember when, we first went there and it was my first time riding it, and even being so excited just to get on the ride, I was so enamored by the queue. I just wanted to stop and read every single plaque and look at every single picture and like trinket that they had in there. It is, you know, probably aside from Haunted Mansion, the best queue at Disney, in my opinion. And it might even give Haunted Mansion a run for its money.
Yeah, it's definitely top 5.
Mm-hmm. So while on these expeditions, the Imagineers brought back much more than just information. More than 8,000 authentic props, including climbing gear, Yeti dolls, costumes, ceramics, and other set pieces were purchased in Nepal. And these items, like we were saying, make up the vast majority of the unique theming seen in the queue, on the ride, and I think most importantly in the surrounding area of the attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is part of what makes it so good is that from the time that you walk into the section of the park that Expedition Everest is in, like you're experiencing part of the attraction.
Mm-hmm.
So much of, like all of the like climbing backpacks that are just hung up. I mean, there's hundreds of them. It's incredible how much detail they went into to bring back these actual hiking backpacks from halfway around the world just to make it feel as authentic as possible.
Right. And it really just helps build the atmosphere of the area in a way that the deeper and deeper you get into it, you're like getting kind of pumped up, like you're
Mm-hmm.
actually going on an adventure.
Right. And to add even more authenticity, many of the photos seen throughout the queue were actually taken by Joe Rohde and the other Imagineers while on location in the Himalayas, which I thought was
What
cool.
can't he do?
I'm telling you.
Like, really?
Well, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but I know one thing he couldn't do.
No.
One thing that he promised he would
He promised he would.
So with detailed development underway, it was time for Disney to announce the plans to the public. And on April 22nd, 2003, during the 5-year anniversary celebration of Animal Kingdom, our boy Bob Iger announced that a new attraction would be coming to the park, Expedition Everest.
Please don't
Legend
call
of the
him our
Forbidden
boy.
Mound.
Sorry, I had to interrupt. I couldn't let that one slide.
All right. Well, if you got to choose one of the Bobs to be our boy, I'm going Iger over Chapek. So
There are so many better Bobs to choose, though. I think I'll go
Bob
Yeehaw.
Barker?
okay, that's Yeehaw is certainly at the top, and I think we can actually refer to him as our boy since he came on the show, right?
Yes, for sure. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. So as the project moved forward, the sheer scale of what was coming became apparent. This would not only be the most expensive roller coaster that Disney had ever developed, but that had been built in the entire world. Over 6 years of development and building racked up a total of $100 million in cost. And Expedition Everest would hold this record until 2019. 13 years.
That's a long time, man.
It's pretty incredible. Yep. Until Universal stole it away from them.
Yeah, but that motorbike adventure is not as good as Everest. I'm not saying it's not good. I haven't ridden it, so I don't know, but I'm assuming it's pretty awesome. But
No, it's way better. I'm sorry.
Is
Have
it?
you ridden it?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay, I take it back.
Like, I've never had like, I don't know what the equivalent of what's like a good term for a jump scare. I've
A
never
jump
like been so
scare.
surprised
Yeah, I
on a
think that's
roller
just
coaster.
That's the term.
Okay, well, I don't like jump scares in like scary movies, so it's negative. But yeah. I mean, I love Everest. It has a special place in my heart because I did get to see the Yeti move the first time I rode it. Never forget it. But
But Hagrid's
yeah,
wins.
objectively, Hagrid's motorbike adventure is top notch. Like probably the best roller coaster I've ever ridden, if we're not counting Tower of Terror.
I watched a ride through video of it. Obviously, I haven't been to Universal in forever, so I haven't ridden it. But I gotta say, from just like a technical perspective, I think, and you saw it personally, so you can probably speak better than I can. The animatronics looked a bit lacking, but as far as the actual coaster and the I would say, I guess, like the two main kind of like surprise ride elements on it, they really knocked it out of the park with that from what I saw on the
Yeah.
ride through.
Like Everest theming wins, I think, for sure. But the actual ride, if we're talking about roller coaster specifically, yeah, Hagrid.
All right.
100%.
Maybe it's time for me to take. It's been a while since I've been to Universal. I haven't been since that opened, I don't think. So
Yeah, we went right after it opened. I guess the January 2020, right before COVID, and it was not that long because like we did that at rope drop, and my dad had to wait like an hour and a half in line, and he was like, "I'm not going to ride this. I'm just going to get out of line," and we made him wait because we knew it would be worth it. Yeah.
So, speaking of Hagrid's, I found this neat fact. So we said that Expedition Everest cost $100 million in 2006 when it opened. And it held the record for most expensive roller coaster until Hagrid's opened in 2019. Do you know how much Hagrid's cost?
Wait, how much did Everest cost?
100 million.
If we're accounting for inflation, 10 years. 450.
No, it wasn't quite that much. It was
Okay.
300. But I thought it was very interesting that it held the record for, over 10 years. And then when it was beaten, it was, tripled. Like nothing in between that time was a little bit more. We had nothing for like 150 million in almost 15 years. And then we have, bam, a $300 million coaster that gets built.
I'm honestly waiting for another roller coaster like that to be built so I can go ride it.
Well, if you say Hagrid's is that good, I can't imagine like what the next generation or type of coaster that
multiple jump scares in a roller coaster.
Would you say Hagrid's has multiple? I mean, it has the reversing and then it has the drop, which I think are like both kind of.
I guess for me, the drop was like, holy moly.
Okay,
Yeah,
no more, no serious spoilers. I'm not a ride through watcher. I'm an experiencer.
Y'all know how I feel about my favorite ride ever, so it just makes sense for me that
you would love the drop.
Some things matters more than others.
Yeah.
But back to 2006, what do you get for $100 million? To begin with, Imagineers had to create a mountain to house the coaster inside. This would be the largest of any of the mountains at Walt Disney World, coming in at 199.5 feet. This allowed them to miss the requirement for placing an aircraft light on top of the structure by a mere 6 inches. I always feel like, the lawmaking organizations that come up with these laws when Disney keeps doing this are like, oh, come on. Like, you know what we're doing. You have to miss it by 6. That's like a rounding error in the measurement.
Yeah. But you can tell, man, when you get up to the top, it feels like you can see forever.
Mm-hmm.
I never even look around because all I do is look at all the ponytail holders.
I try not to look at the hair ties because it makes me angry, but
So, of course, 200 feet is tall, but it is still a far cry from the height of an actual mountain. So, Imagineers utilized the tried and true method of forced perspective to make the peak look taller. As a note to both the storyline and show building design, because I feel like a lot of people get confused about this, the actual attraction building is not meant to be Mount Everest. Guests actually travel through the Forbidden Mountain, which is a fictional peak that was created by the Imagineers. Behind that, guests can see the peak of Mount Everest. So this achieved two major things. One, that obviously it was going to be kind of obvious if you stuck a mountain somewhere and said, hey, this is Mount Everest and it's only 2 feet tall or 200 feet tall. Like, forced perspective can only get you so far. But the other thing that this helped do is because now they were able to stick this mountain that they create that can be what they decide to do because it's fictional. The peak of Mount Everest, they were able to layer behind the Forbidden Mountain, and that helped drive home the forced perspective even more because of the layering effect. It made the Everest peak look even further away and taller. However, it's not to say that the actual attraction is small. Its footprint takes up over 6 acres of land in the Asia section of the park.
wow.
Mm-hmm. So the actual construction of the attraction was divided into 3 separate structures: the coaster itself, the mountain, and the Yeti Animatronic, which we will have more on later. And keep this in mind because it comes up later, and I didn't realize this, but these 3 structures are actually completely independent of each other. The coaster track is not connected to the show building at all, along with the Yeti Animatronic is not tied into any of the other structures. These were completely separate. And because of that, a neat fact is that Imagineers had to account for the flexing of the coaster tracks as the train moves around the track because they come so close to the show building pieces. And if you ever watch roller coaster designs, there's always some flex in the track. They are not completely solid, which if you ever watch some of those videos, it's very unsettling, but it's fact of life.
Yeah, I wish I didn't know that.
I went into this random like deep dive into like watching these videos about roller coasters and like their construction and like some of them that went bad or whatever, but they were showing I mean, it's just part of when the engineers design it, you have to account for flexing in the steel, but it's pretty incredible how much some of them move, and it would make you probably not want to ride one if you saw how much it moved.
Yeah, go watch a wooden roller coaster move. That's really weird.
Yeah. But yeah, I just thought it was cool because I didn't realize that the structures were completely independent, and then obviously because of that, as the track flexes and moves, the mountain doesn't move with it, so they had to ensure that there was enough space between each of them that nothing hit.
This is not. I didn't expect to feel anxiety during this episode.
Oh man. The mountain itself is made up of 5,000 tons of structural steel and rebar and a whopping 10,000 tons of concrete. It's a lot of material.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the exterior was hand-shaped by a team of artists, and the track inside is over 4,000 feet long.
Jeez.
So not to give away too much of the storyline, but this would also be the first time that Disney ever designed a roller coaster that traveled both forwards and backwards. So just the construction of the ride took over 3 years in total and certainly accounted for a large portion of the project's cost. There was, however, one final surprise awaiting guests inside. Rhodey and the Imagineering team wanted a truly unforgettable climax to the attraction, and in doing so took on the most ambitious animatronic design in Disney history. They created a Yeti that was not only the largest ever featured in any of the parks at 25 feet tall, but also had the most complex movements of any animatronic that they had created thus far. The beast could
Dare we
move-
say too ambitious?
Mhm. You might. One might say just that. The beast could move 18 inches vertically, 5 feet horizontally, which for something that big is truly impressive. And,
Is it really that impressive if it doesn't work?
well, I mean, at the time it was impressive.
Did.
Yeah, for a short period of time, it was very impressive. But the part that the stat I should say that really created the biggest issue was that the Yeti animatronic weighed a staggering 20,000 pounds.
Jeez.
Not only was the scale of the animatronic absolutely massive, but the speed and fluidity with which it moved gave it the most terrifying lifelike animation of any figure in the parks. However, as we said, the size and speed of the animatronic would lead to issues down the road. And again, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but anybody that has never seen the video of just the animatronic outside of the attraction operating in A mode on its own, it really is. I mean, especially when you consider that it's almost 20 years old, it is without a doubt, I think, the most technologically impressive thing that Disney has probably ever done.
Mm-hmm.
So, in order to ensure that the costs put into the attractions were recouped, Disney began promoting the ride towards the end of its construction. In 2005, they partnered with the Discovery Channel to release a 3-part documentary on the trips that Joe Rohde and the Imagineers took to the Himalayas, as well as the construction of the ride itself. I definitely remember watching these as a kid because I was so excited for this opening, and it was cool to see, them actually on location and how much, passion and just adventurous, personality went into the creation of this ride.
I wonder if there's somewhere where that's like archived, because I
bet
never
there
saw
is.
them.
Yeah, me either.
I would like to, though.
Another publicity stunt that I was not aware of was one that was launched in 2006 that took place in Times Square called Everest in the City. And Disney took and draped large billboards over multiple buildings in Times Square, which depicted the coaster as well as the Yeti as kind of like a teaser for the attraction.
What?
Yeah, I know. I thought that was a very odd location to choose to do that. I mean, on the one hand, yes, you're going to get a lot of people to see it in Times Square, but I wonder how many people are really traveling from New York, and especially since Times Square is already like such a tourist destination. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure somebody crunched the numbers on that and it made sense, but it seemed kind of odd for me.
I want to see this. Is there pictures or something? Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Huh. Weird.
What did you Google to find that?
Just Everest in the city. I mean, it's like relatively subtle, but like, yeah, I feel like that was a weird choice.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it made sense to the people that planned it, but
Imagine what they would be doing today. There'd be TikToks,
Oh, yeah.
VR.
that's the thing. I feel like these big publicity stunt type promotions are like a thing of the past. Like now you can just do everything online and reach a larger audience and not
it's
have to put as
cheaper.
much money. Exactly. And that's the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
But once the promotions were over, at long last, the attraction opened to the public on April 7th, 2006. The extensive theming, grand show building, and thrilling ride all proved to be a massive hit. Expedition Everest won the 2006 Theme Park Insider Award for World's Best New Theme Park Attraction and took second place in the Golden Ticket Awards Best New Ride category. While the awards were nice, the big question was, would the attraction be able to bring more guests into the park? And the answer seemed to be a resounding yes. Animal Kingdom saw an 8.6% increase in attendance in 2006, up to a very respectable 8.9 million visitors. And this number grew again to 9.5 million in 2007. So it's correlation doesn't necessarily prove causation, but I think in this instance you can definitely say Animal Kingdom had this very noticeable pattern of declining attendance. Nothing new opened up in 4 years. You drop an e-ticket thrill ride into the park and bada bing bada boom, people start coming in. So not only were guests coming into the park, but Expedition Everest was really the attraction that helped break Animal Kingdom of this really fast held reputation of being a half-day park. And I know that still continued up for a while, but this was the ride that really said, this is a theme park. This is, I think, the first thing that Disney really did in Animal Kingdom to make that not a zoo philosophy a reality.
Mm-hmm.
While I was doing this research, I realized that as many times as I have been on Expedition Everest, as much time as I have stopped and tried to take things slow through the queue, I wasn't really that aware of the actual storyline of Expedition Everest, because it has a very actually, it's not loosely written or up to into there's a for real storyline for Expedition Everest. So was gonna write my own, but the kind people over at the Disney Wiki did such a good job of the rundown for this that I figured that I would just give theirs. Riders approach the attraction through the remote village of Surkazong in the fictional kingdom of Anandapur, which is located in the foothills of the Himalayas in northern India. Several village buildings that have been used by the Royal Anandapur Tea Company have been repurposed by businesses that send trekkers on various expeditions through the Himalayas. Expedition Everest is the name of a specific trek arranged by the Himalayan Escapes Tour Company in Surkazong. The entrepreneurs behind Himalayan Escapes, Norbu and Bob, have refurbished a steam train that previously had been used to bring harvested tea leaves down from the mountains. It's these trains the Expedition Everest trekkers board on their way to the base camp of Mount Everest, using a shortcut that passes through the Forbidden Mountain, thought to be guarded by the Yeti. Among local cultures, the Yeti is believed to be a fierce protector of the region's most pristine mountains, valleys, and forests, and violently opposes man's encroachment in these areas. As riders wind their way through the attraction's richly detailed standby queue, half of which is climate controlled, that's a good note, the legend of the Yeti is communicated vividly through a gumba, a kind of Himalayan shrine to the Yeti, and a makeshift museum that documents Yeti sightings. Its significance in Himalayan cultures, and a so-called lost expedition that ran afoul of the creature in 1982 while attempting to reach Everest through the Forbidden Mountain Pass. Near the end of the Yeti Museum, 2 notices hang on the wall. One written by the museum's curator warning against the railroad expeditions, and another by the owner of the expedition company, stating that the curator's notice does not represent the opinions or views of the company. That one I have not noticed before, and that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
The queue merges into the enclosed train station behind the loading area. Once the steam train arrives, the guests board and the expedition begins. The train starts by making a short turn right before ascending a short hill where riders can see Mount Everest. The train then makes a wide left turn and goes straight down, up, then makes another left turn before going up another hill much higher than the previous one. As the train ascends the hill, it goes through a small cavern that holds artifacts revolving around the legend of the Yeti, and a carving of the Yeti can be seen above the exit. At the top, riders approach the snow-covered Himalayan mountain where the train turns left, heads inside the mountain, and then turns again before going up a third hill where riders discover that the tracks have been torn apart.
Oh no.
And also, this is where you get to see the giant collection of hair ties.
Infamous.
Yes, almost as much as the Yeti himself.
Just think of it like if you're on real Everest, it's like all the bodies that are up there.
Well, that's a very morbid way to look at that, but sure.
Sure.
Morbid is my middle name.
I like to think of it as because the Yeti is so hairy, he actually needs all of the hair ties to, you know.
There's sacrifices to the Yeti.
Yeah, it's better.
I like that lore.
But it doesn't work because as the riders ponder what had happened, they begin to hear the yowl of the Yeti's roar and realize that they're in danger.
He wanted a scrunchie, not a hair tie.
He said, "Those pull my hair out."
The Yeti keeps up with trends, okay? He knows scrunchies are back.
The train then goes backwards into the mountain. For a while, riders are going back at full speed in complete darkness until they discover a passageway out of the mountain, but not before they see the shadow of the Yeti tearing apart another piece of track. Upon seeing this sight, the train moves forward through the exit of the mountain cave, where it drops down and banks left before heading into another cave where the roars of the Yeti can be heard. After the train comes out, it twists around left until it heads into a third cave where it turns right and riders see the Yeti. And this very sad note, who is currently in B mode, and then return to the station with the Yeti howling in rage behind them. So I love that rundown because, you know, I think you get the basic gist that you're going like in a kind of like tour company that's taking you on a train through the Himalayas. But, you know, as much of this stuff that the Imagineers work on for the Disney attractions, if you're willing to dig deeper into it, there's usually a very detailed, in-depth backstory, and this one is certainly no exception.
I kind of wish it was a little more, I don't know, pronounced. You know what I mean? Like, I like you said, I've always known that it was like, oh, we're going on a expedition, like a tour. The touring company is taking us, and here's the museum with all the Yeti stuff, but I didn't know like the whole backstory. But I guess, you know, if you just stop and pay attention enough, then maybe you would get the gist. Maybe next time we go, we'll look around and see things that we didn't notice before that feed into that storyline.
You know, and I definitely get why Disney doesn't do that, you know, because for the vast majority of the guests, they're not going to care. And that's totally okay. But I do love that for the people that want to dig deeper, like Disney has stuff for them too. So, but yeah, I remember being a kid, first time going on this attraction. I mean, this was before, you know, like I was going on the internet all the time. And, you know, before, like, I feel like the Disney internet community was really that big of a thing. So the first time, I mean, I remember it so vividly going on Expedition Everest. I went into it completely blind. And, you know, coming up to that part where the tracks are torn up, not knowing that it was going to be there, and then it going backwards, I think that had to be overall like the greatest like Disney surprise experience I've ever had before. And, you know, it's one of the reasons that I like purposefully try so hard not to watch ride-through videos of Disney attractions before I go on them, because I really do. I think back to how awesome that was riding Expedition Everest for the first time, and it's almost impossible to get that blind of an experience from a Disney attraction anymore. Especially for people like us that are constantly looking up Disney stuff.
I know, that's the worst. It's like, you know, I feel like ride spoilers are not a lot of times as bad as like movie spoilers, but
yeah,
I hate spoilers so much. And the big difference is that when a movie comes out, like, I'm like, if it's a movie I care about a spoiler, I'm there on opening night so that I don't get spoiled. And I'm not on the internet at all that day. Like, I'm staying off social media. But, you know, I can't just show up to the ride on opening day every
Yeah.
time. So you're bound to get some here and there.
Yep. But regardless, it's a great attraction. Many highlights, but the time has come. We got to talk about it.
Got to talk about the Disco Yeti in the room.
Yes, we do. For many of the guests, the highlight of the attraction was the frightening Yeti animatronic swiping at them before they careened over the coaster's final drop. Unfortunately, the mass and speed of the Yeti was taking its toll on the structure's concrete base. And this is one thing that I think a lot of people get wrong when they talk about this. A lot of Disney fans know the Yeti's in B mode, but it's important to note there's nothing wrong with the Yeti. The Yeti itself is 100% fully operational. The issue...
It's if they kept doing it, right?
Well, so let me rephrase that. If you were to take the Yeti animatronic outside of the attraction and mount it somewhere, it could operate fine. The animatronic itself is not damaged. What is damaged is the concrete base that the structure is attached to in the foundation of the ride. So, the animatronic itself rides on a sled that is mounted to a structural beam that is itself mounted to a concrete base, and it slides out on this concrete, or on this sled, and then on that sled the Yeti can then itself move up and down. So if you can picture this, you've got a 20,000 pound animatronic that is not only cantilevered out because it's riding on the sled, but it's not just hanging out that far. It's sliding out, and then it has to come to a dead stop and then slide back in, which is just an insane amount of force that is put on that concrete base. So or at least outside of the actual Disney company, it seems like nobody's really been able to point down when the exact timeline of all this was, but sometime within the first 3 years of the operation of the ride, multiple inspections were taken and showed that there were cracks forming in the concrete base that the Yeti was attached to. So they ran back and they did evaluations, and it was concluded that the software that they had originally used during the design phase to analyze the structure's design didn't account for the curing of the concrete properly. And a lot of this had to do with the fact that because these were being built, the animatronic itself, the structure of the coaster, and then the structure of the mountain were built and kind of like different teams, but going on at the same time, that the pouring of the concrete and the curing of it with the other structures around it was not taken into place. Ultimately, it resulted in a base that was too weak to account for the forces that were going to be placed on it because of the animatronic.
So if they had let it cure longer, would it be fine?
Well, not necessarily longer, but done a more proper cure on the concrete. I'm certainly not an expert in curing concrete. But
if they ran it today, like, it would work, right? It's just if they continued to run it every single day, there would be. So how much do you think they would sell it to me for? And I could put it in my backyard.
So, therein lies the issue, because well, no, but for real, it seems like a lot of people keep saying, why don't they just fix it? And I'll get to that in a sec, because it's not easy, or obviously Disney would have done it. But the Yeti,
I mean, I don't know if that statement in and of itself necessarily stands true.
It is
but in this situation, I would say I agree.
It is a lot more involved than you would imagine to get it out of there.
Well, yeah, because essentially, like, if they kept running it, it would like crack and fall, and a bunch of people would get hurt or die.
Right.
So they would have to.
That would just be one train car. Like,
it's a sacrifice we're all willing to make. A train car full of strangers for a fully functional Yeti.
So
no, I'm just kidding.
This is like that train problem in philosophy. Instead of being two people on one side and one person on the other, it's a train full of people on one side and the Yeti winding up in Kirsten's backyard on the other. And she's going to pull that lever and pull it hard.
Oh man!
But they would have to take the top of the mountain off, right?
They would have to, they would have to do a lot more than that, which is what I didn't realize. But
Joe Rohde shouldn't make promises he can't keep.
I'm telling
and then
you.
Retire.
Yes. But regardless, the Yeti was placed in B mode of operation, which turned off all the motions and added a strobe light as guests passed by it. This was a huge letdown for many visitors to the park that wanted to see the ride fully operational. And as we know, in the Disney community, the watered-down version of the animatronic came to be known as Disco Yeti. So another thing to note is that when this first happened, when there was an issue, this isn't really a particularly strange occurrence for a Disney attraction. And in fact, most complex animatronics on Disney attractions have a B mode of operation. And this comes on if there is a malfunction or something happens that makes it unable to operate in its A mode. But as the months and years dragged on, Disco Yeti remained, and it seemed that he was here to stay. So the issue with this is that the way in which the attraction was constructed meant that in order to access the animatronic's base and remove it for repairs, would Kirsten first require them to remove a large portion of the mountain facade. This becomes an issue because the mountain facade is made up of concrete, rebar, and steel structure, and it is actually really not that strong. That is one of the biggest reasons why the track and the mountain and the animatronic are not tied together, is that they knew that if the track was tied into the mountain, that over time as it moved, cracks would generate. So to go in there and essentially cut off the top of the mountain would more than likely induce cracking in the rest of the structure elsewhere, and you're kind of continually chasing your tail. Sure, you might be able to get in there to access the Yeti, but now you may, weaken the structure of the mountain to a point that the cracks form, it flexes, and now you've got the mountain ruined.
What kind of third-rate engineers did they hire for this? Do they not know to think ahead?
It honestly is kind of surprising, because the other thing that made it so difficult too is that if you ever look at pictures of the inside of where the Yeti base mounts, there is so much structure around it. I mean, like the Imagineers quite, they painted themselves into a corner. If you ever look at the pictures, it's worse than Space Mountain. It really is. If you look at the way the structure is built around the base of the Yeti animatronic, there is so much just like twisted metal all over the place that you really realize how difficult it would be to get in there with tooling to cut away the concrete, get a massive crane in there to lift this out without damaging any other part of it. You'll understand why it's not a simple thing. And really, until I was looking at the pictures for this research, I kind of thought the same thing too. Like, surely there's a way to get in there and fix it. There's really not. Like, a massive portion of the track would have to be torn apart to get to it.
Do you have a website where you were looking at these pictures?
I do. I have like 10,000 tabs pulled open right now, but I will try to find it and send it to you, because it really was cool. So anybody that's listening to this, if you get a chance, look it up and see, because it really kind of drives home the point of why Disney hasn't done this.
And I'll try to link it. If you send the link, I'll link it on the website posting for this episode as well.
So it seemed that guests would have to accept the new, funkier Yeti, but in 2013, a shimmer of hope emerged. When questioned about the Yeti at that year's D23 conference, Joe Rohde had this to say: "You have to understand, it's a giant, complicated machine sitting on top of like a 46-foot tall tower in the middle of a finished building, so it's really hard to fix. But we are working on it, and we continue to work on it. We've tried several things, none of them quite to get the key of turning. Sorry, none of them quite get to the key turning of the 40-foot tower inside of a finished building, but we are working on it." And most importantly, he said, quote, "I will fix the Yeti someday, I swear."
You know, I'm going to have to start tweeting him like I was tweeting at Bob Iger, bring back wishes. I'm just going to start tweeting him every day. "I will fix the Yeti someday, I swear." Joe Rohde.
You know, I'm sure somebody has probably written a bot that does that already.
To be fair, he said someday, so he has until he dies, I guess.
Well, fortunately, over the next few years, no fixes came, and in 2020, Joe responded to a tweet about accessing the Yeti for repairs with this, quote, "It's not an issue of maintenance access. They were part of the design team and set the standard. In fact, it was seen as a model collaborative process. It's an unexpected and unforeseen set of issues, very complex, with no easy or timely solutions as of yet. These guys did not ignore something or botch it. Innovation is like physical exploration of unknown spaces. There is stuff out there that you didn't know and only encounter it by exploration. But then there it is." So that very cryptic response didn't really update anybody about what was really going on with the Yeti. Obviously, I think it was nice for Joe Rohde to come out and say, "Hey, like this wasn't like somebody didn't do like he's not going to throw the Imagineering team."
They're great engineers.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it still kind of left people scratching their heads because, hey, it's not fixed. And then later in 2020, Rohde announced his retirement from Disney Imagineering. And with that, many have lost hope at the Yeti ever returning to its former glory. So, yeah.
With all the advancements that they've made in the past, 15, 16 years since this ride came out, though, like, if it were being built today, even not knowing what they knew, don't you think it could have been what it was supposed to be? Like, don't you think, do you think that to this day, you know, there's much better technology so it wouldn't have to weigh like 20,000 pounds or whatever?
I mean, that's part of it. I also think that with, you know, the analysis software that's come out in the last couple of years, and certainly from 20 years ago, there would be a big enough improvement that there wouldn't have been the concrete cracking issue, or, you know, obviously knowing that they would have found a way to make it stronger. So yes, but that's kind of just the thing. It's like now it seems like it's almost easier. Like I feel like there's a better chance of another iteration of Expedition Everest getting built in another park that has it functioning than we are of getting a fix for the Animal Kingdom version.
Right. Because I mean, like you were saying earlier, it is, you know, one of the big e-ticket attractions at Animal Kingdom, and if they were going to fix it, even if they wanted to pour all the money and time and energy into it, that would be a big refurbishment. That ride would have to be closed for a really long time, and you know that would definitely affect like the flow of the park and people's vacations, and Disney doesn't want to do it.
Yeah. But in conclusion, aside from the Yeti operating in B mode, very little has changed from the attraction since opening day. And again, I think that very much speaks to how much of a complete attraction it was from opening day. I don't think anything really, obviously, if we still had the Yeti in A mode, there's not a thing that I would need to change on that attraction for me.
Yeah.
And until the opening of Pandora in 2017, Expedition Everest served as Animal Kingdom's main e-ticket attraction, and certainly, the main thrill ride that Disney kind of had as a whole, really outside of MGM or Hollywood Studios at the time. And I think that's another big thing, that the longevity of it, that not only was it 2006 isn't that long ago, but how many other attractions built in that time lasted for like 10 years as the main e-ticket attraction for that park? Like, not very many, I feel like. So for it to, obviously Disney spent a ton of money on it, so it probably should serve that purpose, but it's cool to see that today, other than the Yeti not working, it's still regarded as a huge e-ticket attraction for the park.
Yeah, for sure.
And not to get anybody's hopes up, but the ride is currently undergoing a refurbishment, but it seems like the changes are going to be so minor, and there's certainly no hope of the Yeti coming back to life. But if you're ever walking around Animal Kingdom, look over at Expedition Everest and notice that the top has been cut off of the mountain. There may be hope. But until then,
we can dream.
You're going to have to deal with Disco Yeti up until that point. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got on the history of Expedition Everest. I gotta say, like, obviously I think there's some cool parts in the like the planning and construction phase, but honestly, if the Yeti hadn't had its issue and gone into B mode, there really wouldn't be much history between the opening of this attraction and today.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yep. So yeah, unless y'all have got some other comments on Expedition Everest, I guess we can wrap it up.
I think I'm good.
Cool. Yeah, me too.
I will.
Stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.